Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, get to drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best version of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. I did want to let everybody know, before we continue with the show, that this week, on February 7th, I will be putting on a webinar about how to basically let employees know that their voices are important. As you know, a lot of my focus is on engaging employees, and listening to their voices and acting upon it is the most powerful way to show them that you care and the most powerful way to engage them. So on February 7th, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, I'll be hosting a webinar where I'll be talking about the most effective ways to listen to your employees and how to really use their voices to not only guide strategic direction, but help to increase engagement and retention. So you'll be able to find a link to that in the description within this podcast on iTunes or where you're listening. But also, you can go to my website at customerfanatics.com, and you will see it inside of the show notes there underneath the podcast that's listed. So again, customerfanatics.com, it'll be listed there, or it'll be listed within the description of this podcast wherever you're listening. And you can just go click on that link and then get access to the webinar. It is a free webinar, and I want to make sure that you, especially my listeners, are getting access to it. So enjoy this show, and hope to hopefully see you on the webinar soon. Hello, everyone. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast, and I'm super excited today to be joined by Daniel McCollum, and he was referred to me actually by someone who's a listener, so I'm hoping you're listening right now, someone who's a listener of this show, and after she had been listening for a while, thought, I have got to get the person who's the founder of our company. I have to get him on the show. And so I was like, absolutely, I trust you. I don't need to know anymore. Just send me his information and we're going to get on with it. So I did have a chance to speak with him before this, and really was impressed with him. And I'm super excited to hear, about his leadership journey. So Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
So I started the company Torrent Consulting back in 2012. So about 6.5 years ago, made the jump, and with no investment and very little money in the bank, took a leap and said, I'm going to start my own company. And so I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was going to go consult, which is a really broad term. That's kind of what you do when you're not sure. But about 1.5 years in, really, we started focusing on Salesforce.com consulting. We became a partner of theirs, and we really brought kind of a fresh lens to that space around coming into companies that were buying Salesforce technology. But what we realized, and kind of my background, and what we realized was we were solving business problems using technology. And so that really resonated with the market. And we really started growing in 2014 really fast. We were on the Inc. 5000 list. We've been on it 3 years in a row. We were in the top 500 for a couple of those years. But we've grown to about 90 employees now. Nice. We're spread. We have 4 offices in the United States. So in Charlotte, North Carolina, Washington, D.C., Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Kansas City, Missouri. And then we have an office in Antigua, Guatemala, which is where I'm currently at right now and have been living here for the last 1.5 years as we've gotten this office off the ground.
That sounds amazing. I just can't imagine living where you're at. Again, like as before the call, you were talking about you're near these, 1 active volcano, 2 inactive, and that's just an amazing life to be living in my mind, to just be even in that presence. And just watching The Office, I bet it's just gorgeous. So I really want to thank you for coming on and joining us from that distance. Okay, so what do you think is the thing that drives you to lead? So there's usually like something that, when we think about why we lead people, why we lead organizations, it usually stems from something. It comes from a place. I'm curious to know what yours might be.
Yeah, so I think for me, I did a lot of soul searching in 2018 and kind of diving inward to figure some of these types of questions out. So what was kind of like my personal why? What drove me? We revisit as a company what our company why. I've learned a lot from Simon Sinek and his Golden Circle and start with why. And so we did it as a company to kind of go back and refresh our why and our core values. But then I personally applied that and spent about 6 months kind of going deep about what really drives me. What am I passionate about? So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a husband. I'm a father to 3. But what really drives me and what's kind of that thread? And so what it did is it took me back to reflect on the last 20, 25 years of my life. And I had somebody in our company, we have a well-being coach. And so she took me on this kind of 4-month journey to reflect and really dig deep into like, what are those common threads in my life and what am I passionate about? So I think kind of when I think about that question, like what kind of drives me or really for me, it starts with loving and serving. Like that's really at the core. I think what I realize is like to love and serve people every day. And so that for me, that has a deep kind of roots in my faith. And I think when I've kind of boiled my faith down, like in what I believe, I think it's like, it's loving and serving others. Right. And so that's kind of at the root of kind of my kind of foundation. Now, I think how I do that, my unique way, my personal why, and what I'm really passionate about is raising up leaders and giving that opportunity to all people, regardless of economic status, race, religion, where you're at in the world. I mean, all of these categories that get created, I'm passionate about raising up and extending that opportunity to all people so that together we can make an impact in the world. And so when I think about what drives me, I think the love and serving is the root, but then how that kind of applies to me and my personal passion is raising up leaders. And I realized this not just in my company, but I started realizing with my kids. My daughter, we were living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time when she was 5, and I would take her to the bus stop and I would stand there and talk to her about being a leader in her kindergarten class. And so as I went through this journey last year, I started like seeing these patterns. I'm like, I talk to my kids all the time about being leaders. I talk to them a lot about, loving and serving people who aren't like us. It's part of the reason why we're living in Guatemala is to expose them to that. But I think this thread of like wanting to help raise up other leaders, and that's my personal kind of outlet, I guess, for loving and serving, and where I feel like I can bring maybe the most value to the world, to my family, my community, the business, the 85, 90 employees that we have. That was kind of the common thread that I really realized, like, I'm passionate about this. Like so when I was asked to be on your podcast, I was like, this is like right up my alley. Cause I'm just realizing that this is one of my kind of the thread that it really, the fuel in the tank that really propels me forward every day.
Oh, I love that. I love the, just your perspective of first going back to the root, but thinking about how that root of loving and serving, again, most people may think of that. There may be people that think of that as like, oh, that's just squishy, people who, oh, that's just too soft, right? But that loving and serving that's inside of you comes through to the people that you are trying to raise up. And even if you don't do that perfectly well or exactly how they might want it, because they know inside of you, your whole focus is loving and serving others, it makes them more receptive to be raised up by you, right? So let's say if there's another leader, for example, whose mission wasn't necessarily focused on that, but it was like, I'm going to raise up leaders, just, I'm going to raise them up, but in the end, it helps me look good as a leader. So it's like, there's this double-sidedness to it, but to be at the core to say, I want to do it, I want to do this because this is just who I am. I want to make sure that I'm serving people, and this is how I do it. I like that idea that you talked about, that this is the outlet, because everybody has different outlets for doing that thing, right? And I really praise you for taking to saying, like, this is the outlet I do to use this to drive this why inside of me. It's pretty cool, pretty darn cool.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's been a journey to get here, and I think, I mean, I'm 40 years old, and I think it's like, man, I wish I would have known this 15, 20 years ago, but I think that's just part of the journey and the process, right? It's a discovery, it's a journey to kind of understand these things, and these experiences along the way. I've been really blessed to have had a wide variety of experiences, living in different parts of the world, different types of jobs, different industries. And then being in consulting since 2004, I mean, we see all kinds of industries, and I've been into hundreds of businesses and kind of seeing how they operate. So as much as I wish I would have understood this before, I realized the journey is, that's been a big part of me kind of getting to some of this realization of my own kind of personal why and what drives me as a leader.
And there's a richness there, right? Because, at some point and at many points in our lives, particularly depending where you are in your career, but you get more advanced in it, people want you to start telling that story. The story would be super boring, right, if you got it 20 something years ago. So
yes,
right
it would be. Yeah.
It makes it really, really interesting for those who are listening. So I thank you for that. So what do you think your people, how do you think your people right now would describe you as a leader? So not what you think you are as a leader, your style, but how would they describe you?
It's a great question. I think, I hope, maybe I'll go ask them after this recording. So I think authentic. I think somebody who has core beliefs, and those core beliefs drive decisions that we make as a company, that I make as a leader, that I don't waver from those. I think somebody who empowers others to lead, doesn't leave them hanging, to just go, I'm not talking about abdicating, but actually empowering others, which I think is a big difference. So my company has seen me get up in our company meetings, and we have them once a month, probably every other month. They probably seen me cry because I really get choked up and passionate about our people and what they're doing every day. And so, I'm pretty open, and I think vulnerable and authentic about what our people are doing and the struggles that they go through, the celebrations that they have. And so I think that's how they describe me. I hope that, but I think what that came to mind as this kind of prepping for this was servant oriented. And I think, to me, like, that's the kind of leader I want to be, a servant oriented leader. And so that's what, when I really dug deep in this idea of loving and serving, it's coming every day and trying to figure out how do I serve the people that report to me so that they can be successful? How do I enable them to be successful? How do I help them grow? How do I instill it with them, and how do I correct along the way? It doesn't mean, there's not correction. It doesn't mean there's wrestling, disagreeing, 5 dysfunctions of the team. Patrick Lencioni talks about that, right? Trust, and then that, conflict. And so that actually has created, having that trust has created a place where, even as a servant-oriented leader, like, there should be conflict, there should be wrestling, there will be hard decisions to make along the way, but it's really a mindset that I'm putting others first, and I'm trying to help make them successful. Is kind of how I think about servant-oriented leader. It is it puts you in a frame of mind every morning, every day, that really, like, I think allows you to come in and make it not about yourself, right? Which I know that can happen. I think you can slip into that even with some of the best intentions. And so those are some thoughts about how I think I would be described by some of them. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned, which I think it's a fine point, but it's one worth mentioning, and it's this difference between empowering people and then abdicating all of your responsibility to a project, a process, a system, whatever it is. So when we look at true leaders, they empower those by mostly, like, giving them courage, by allowing them to be courageous and take risks to move the business forward in responsible ways. And then be there as a resource or as a sounding board, but not just to be like, it's your thing. See ya. I'm off to Hawaii now, or, see ya. I have another thing, and that's just it. Right. And I'm never checking in with you. And so that leader with heart sticks there in the distance. It reminds me of this many years ago. My husband and I, actually, it was when we were going for a honeymoon, and we went to this restaurant, and it was a 5-star, 5-diamond kind of thing. And we got there, we had our names were on the menus. It was so cool. They were like custom menus. They had our names on it. But then we'd look over on the back, and it would be like in the shadows, the servers would be way in the back, like not in our way, but they would be like 5 of them watching us, like waiting for anything we needed, right? But they were just in the back. They weren't in the front saying, I eat it like this, do this thing. They were more watching for the needs that we had, but not getting in our way. And that's what I visualize when you talk about abdicating. It's just being there in the background, definitely waiting, and there to sounding board, but allowing them to kind of walk that path and sometimes make mistakes.
Yeah, and I think it definitely it's definitely an art, not a science, I think. And so, but I think them knowing that you're there to support them, and I mean in our business we meet with all of our executives and managers every morning for 10 minutes to do a huddle, and we look at our kind of top 8 or 9 metrics across the business from the day before. And so we are very engaged. I'm very engaged in the business. I know what happened yesterday. I know that before I come to that meeting, because I look at our dashboards and I see some of that. So it's staying really engaged, but it's I think it's having a spirit of I'm here to serve and to help. I'm here to remove barriers for you. I'm here to help you be successful. And then I think the other piece, and I like what you said about the courage. I think the other piece is speaking the future into those people that you're supporting and those future leaders. So where do I see, the people that are reporting to me or other people in our business, where do I help see them in 2 or 3 years? Because I think that's where the fear comes in, which is where you need courage. It's not the absence of fear, right? Courage is the willingness to face the fear and move through it. And so, but I think that's hard. We all need that, right? Like for somebody to say, this is what I see in you, and for the next couple of years, I see you being this. I see you building that. I see you having a voice. And so, I think that's really important, especially if you're in the mode and the mindset of like, I'm going to help you be successful, helping project out what success could look like. Our finance director, I tell her, and I know she'll listen to this, but I tell her, Carrie, you are a very unique, purpose-driven CFO or a finance director. You will be you have the opportunity to be a purpose-driven CFO one day that has a really unique voice and perspective, that loves people, is powered by people, but she knows finances and she runs our numbers and she keeps us all in line. But man, she exudes the love of people and loving people. And that is a really, really rare quality in a finance person. No offense to all of our finance people out there. We all love them. But
yes,
I think projecting and speaking that into people's lives is really important. And so that actually, I think, helps give them the courage to make decisions, to take those little steps in the journey to develop them as a leader. But we all need that. We all need people in our lives, whether you're 8 years old or 80, we all need people in our lives, instilling some of that potential. What is that potential? What could that look like? And what could you look like as a leader in the coming years? And so that's a part of my job, is to help people see that, give them the courage to remind them of that, help give them the tools to make those steps to get to where they need to go, and give them opportunity, in the context of our business, give them the opportunity to develop a voice and speak to the company and to those on their team in the way that they're developing. So
I love it. It sounds like a playground for leaders is what it sounds like. It's like the future leaders. It's a playground. Literally, it's what it sounds like, because there aren't many leaders, I think, that could probably speak the future into their people, which, by the way, will probably end up being the title of this podcast, because I love that. But that idea of speaking the future to them, I here's what I find. I find that I do this well, but here's where I kind of fall down. Well, I take it a little personally when they fall short. So I build up this really big vision of what they can be and kind of the direction they're going. And then I won't take it out on them, but I'll think to myself, oh gosh, they're like not anywhere near, like they keep going backward, they're not going forward. I'm just saying in the past, it's been one of the things that's been a
Mhm.
problem for me. How do you handle that when you do have this really big, bold perspective of what someone's going to be, and then they just aren't taking it in. They aren't
Uh,
buying it.
it's difficult. It's probably one of the most difficult things of being a leader, I think, is seeing the potential in somebody else or the opportunity and that not working out for whatever reason, right? It could be, they were on the wrong seat on the right bus at the wrong time, or the wrong bus, or they just never saw it in themselves, or they just didn't believe, right? And or have the courage to face that. And so um, I think the way I've kind of come to deal with that, because that is hard early in your leadership development. I think what I've come to realize is that's part of it. That's part of that person's journey, right? I don't expect everybody to come to Torrent Consulting and be here for 40 years and retire, right? Like part of their journey, this may be a leg of their journey. They may need to go somewhere else to advance in their leadership development, right? Advance in their skill development. So we are not the end all be all. In fact, that's part of our company's, I think, job is to help people understand their personal why. It's why we have a well-being coach that, is meeting on a weekly basis with a handful of our people. We're piloting this, but she met with me, she's meeting with others. Like, you help people discover their purpose and why and their passion. Those people aren't all going to be able to live that out at Torrent as much as I would love it. Like sometimes they need to move on. So I think I've come to realize like this could be a stopping ground for some people, kind of a step in the journey. I think for some people, and hopefully a lot of our people, they find that opportunity. We are growing. We are focusing on growth and development of our people. But when you have a business that's growing, the needs that arise for more and more leaders actually, we there's a ton of opportunity for people to grow over time, really in a fast way. If you have a company that's growing 3% a year versus a company that's growing 40, like there's going to be a lot of leadership opportunity, more leadership opportunities. So that keeps people fueled and growing and stretching. And so, but I think just realizing like I don't have a corner on the market of leadership development or the best job or company in the world. And some people may come in and, and leave in a couple of years and, go to the next place and kind of sharpen their skills more than we can do here. Maybe we're not a fit. So, so I don't know. I think you just have to realize, like, I took that stuff really personally the first couple of years when you had people come and leave and you're like, oh man, like I thought we were the perfect company. Right. And we weren't, and we're not. But now I've realized and matured, and it's like, well, those are some of the most interesting. I meet with every person that leaves the company, and so we do a formal exit interview, kind of our people person. But then I meet to just thank them for serving at Torrent and being a part of it. And I think over the last 6 or 12 months, we've had fewer people leaving, but those ones have been leaving. I've had some really, really rich conversations with those people, and it's more about they're thankful for having the opportunity. I mean, some of these people are leaving because they've realized being here that there's something else that they should be doing. I had a guy early on that was with us. We were 15 people, and he just got to the point. He's like, I want to go work at another company that's 15 and grow that again. And he's like, I just want to. I love that. I thrive in that. And so, somebody I keep in touch with. We left on great terms, and so I don't know. I think that's just the mindset of like we're not perfect. We don't have a corner on the market, and people are going to grow and evolve, and we're a piece of that journey for them. I do hope, and I do think we're building some longer term leaders, some of the things that we're doing that really, I think people can have the space to grow and develop and kind of see their strengths and skills fully come to life here at Torrent.
Okay, so it's one of those things that keep going deeper and deeper. Yeah. I do want to ask you this question because it's one of those ones that I think is seriously the most insightful for those listening. And it is, when was there a time when maybe you weren't as enlightened as you are today? Like you just, obviously right now you get it and you are working hard. And of course, like all of us, it's a journey and you're working to get better every day at it, right? But when was it that you weren't very proud of your leadership? And what did you do to come out of it? If you can give us a specific example, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So I was thinking, yeah, this is a great question. So, I think in the early years of Torrent, we were growing so fast. I mean, 130, 40% a year over year growth revenue. And so in some ways, right, it's what you aspire for as an entrepreneur. You're trying to build something. I didn't have outside investing, outside funding, right? So we were like cash flowing our own growth and stay profitable, stay in business, hire more people. Just you kind of make it work. We're a professional services company. And so I think over time, that was about a 3 or 4 year period. I mean, when you're growing that fast, you don't have the time to slow down and really build the infrastructure out that your people need and support the people as they need it. And so I think we had some kind of big shifting at the end of 2017 from a leadership, and 2017 had kind of been a rough year from a culture perspective. And so the end of 2017, I was really facing a lot of challenges and trying to figure out how do I kind of rebuild the culture and some of that trust that was lost. And I was on a flight actually back to Charlotte from Guatemala, and I drew on a Coca-Cola napkin, this tree and some roots. And so I kind of had this picture of like, we need to go deeper as a company. We need to slow down. We need to build the roots. We have this big oak tree, and as soon as the storm comes through, it's going to fall and we're going to be done. So I showed up, talked to our executive team. We ended up rolling that out as our theme for 2018. And so, which was rooting down in excellence. And so I think as a leader, I realized like I look back and I don't know if I would call it a failure, just the reality of the growth, but we definitely weren't on stable ground those last couple of years. A lot of it was because the growth was fast, but I think I look back and feel like, man, I wish I would have done some things differently. I wish I would have, maybe slowed down and taken the time to deepen the roots. So I think the way I probably, I guess, course corrected, or kind of once I was enlightened and realized that was really last year, 2018. I showed up and said, guys, like, I know it's been a crazy growth and 2017 was really tough. Like, we are pausing, we are rooting down, we are focusing on these 5 areas of our business, and we are going to get these things right and go deeper. We're going to slow our growth down. And that set the tone for the whole year. And I think that people saw that I wasn't just about growth and trying to build a big business. It was actually kind of what I said earlier, is like really putting actions behind those words. And so, and those core beliefs, that those should drive our decisions. So I didn't know what that was going to produce at the time. I just knew it was the right thing. We need to slow down and put some roots down. We need to like get some fundamentals right. And I think that set the tone for the year and really the start of the change of our culture and kind of the rebirth, I think, of our company and the culture in 2018.
Very interesting. I mean, we hear all the time about, company founders and then like the different growth and scaling and all that. And is the person that's there now, the odds are they're not the right person for 100 or 200 or 300 or 500 or 1,000 employees, right? That different level of growth. I think it's because rarely do those founders get to this like point of, it's like a point of humility to a certain extent. Like, this is not about like, whoa, how big can we get this? How big can I make this? How much more can we have? How much larger can my sphere be? Right. But it's like you slowing down allows you to say, what kind of true impact can I and we actually make if, like you said, if we deepen the roots? It's a unique way, because I think that's what happens. They just, everything, it's so much again around the person who's the founder that it's hard to just establish this culture that's separate from that person. And then allow that whole company to move forward in a much larger way, but maybe again in a slower, more strategic and methodical way, right? So I think it's a lot about you, that you had the reality and you did it.
Well, I came to the realization that if I'm going to get up and talk about growing leaders and being servant oriented and growing and developing, to like, I as the CEO have to be the one that grows the fastest, leads the most, that serves the most of anybody in the company. So, because if I can't keep up and I can't model that, then nobody else will be able to. And I think CEOs kind of tap out, or founders kind of tap out somewhere along the way. And I don't know where it's at. well, I know what the statistics say. Usually it's, only 0.04% actually get it to like $10 million in revenue, right? So it's usually way below that. So, but I know I have to be the one, if I'm getting up and saying, guys, we got to grow and develop leaders this year. Like I personally have to grow and develop as fast, and I would say faster than anybody else in the company to keep up, especially if I have the right people in the company, because we have some amazing people that are growing really fast and are amazing leaders. So they're going to blow past me and be applying for my job one day if I'm not growing either. So,
Oh, no, I love it.
but I think that's a mindset. I think you're right. I mean, I come to realize as growth has come, as we've grown, as we've expanded, for me personally as a leader, it has made me more humble and feel more of a sense of responsibility that I couldn't have explained a couple years ago. I know you hear about a lot of leaders and founders, like they grow and kind of grow out of touch and, kind of get prideful, right? And kind of carry on their, like, hey, this is my thing that I built and look at me. And I think the opposites happen for me. Every day I feel heavier responsibility to not screw anything up and to be a servant leader. And then I feel a sense of humility when I'm sitting in a room with, 20 of my key leaders, and they're just, some of them are, we're sharing stories about people's lives being impacted, employees or customers or communities that we're working in. And so like, there is this like heavy sense of responsibility and I think just humility that I get the opportunity to, to lead a group of people every day and kind of set the course. I mean, that's not that's a privilege, right? That's not a right that I have, even as the founder, even as like someone who, quit my job, had $7,000 in the bank to start the business. Like even today, like that's a privilege that I have every day, that I get to lead other people, not a right. And so I think remembering that and continuing to have that in the forefront, it's a sense of humility, I think, or just humble, just like feel humbled that I get to do this every day, that I would be given this opportunity. Never took a business class, never studied business, like, and just kind of honestly self through a lot of reading and meeting with other leaders and, following probably more my gut on things too. It's kind of a humbling place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, again, just a lot of richness there. So many different ways I could take that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So for leaders that are listening in right now that, might just be at a crossroads, might be struggling in some way in their leadership, leading others, leading organizations, or just people. What might be some last pearls of wisdom or some great nuggets you can leave them? Something that might give them a little bit extra oomph to help them move forward.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think they can happen in parallel, but I think it's this one is discovering your personal why. Like, what really is that the heartbeat that makes you who you are? What is your purpose, your passion? And so I mentioned earlier, Simon Sinek has kind of covered this and has a book called Finding Your Why now that's really helpful. But I think trying to find like, what is my personal why? What is like, what fuels me every day? That's not like sit down for 2 hours and kind of, scribble it out and you figured it out. It's a little bit of a journey to kind of reflect on your life and your experiences. But Simon says, and I really believe, like those things are really instilled in you from an early age and don't really change. It's like that thread of like, that doesn't change. So I think in parallel, working the organization or you business you work in, if you can't answer the question, why does this company exist and why does this organization exist? And do I resonate with that? Does everything the leadership in the company does align to that and the values align to that? Like, I think that's where a lot of people are working in organizations that either don't even have a why, they couldn't even tell you what it was, they don't feel connected to it, or they do, but the business doesn't make decisions based on that and the values. And so I think that's like for me, it was a parallel journey, kind of discovering, going through like what drives and fuels me and what is that? And then I think for the business, I had the chance to step back and kind of refresh our why and say, well, why do we exist as a business? And really kind of cement that down and then refresh some of our core values to make sure like this is how we live this out every day. So, but I think leaders, if you can't connect at that deep level with the company organization's why and the values, it's either they don't either exist very strongly, or they're not being lived out. And so they're just plaques on a wall, right? They're just stickers on a wall with some values about integrity, honesty, and all of those, trust, and some of those vague terms that we hear. But I think if you can't answer that question, your organization can't, you need to go find another job, I think, and find a place where you can be passionate and aligned to what that organization's about. So,
and I think that's, pretty direct and clear guidance. And I do agree, it's true, because otherwise what we're doing is we're spending all of the years we have on this earth, and none of us know how long those are, doing something that just doesn't align with what we're meant to do, what we were put on the earth to do. So why would we waste our time doing anything other than that? I think it makes total sense to find a North Star for ourselves, and then make sure, even if we're not the owner of the organization, but we are a manager, a supervisor, a leader, again, figuring out, is the work that you're doing with the team that you have align with those things that, from the very beginning of your existence. And I agree with you. If not, either find another role within it. If you are not the owner, you are the owner. You might be, if you're the founder, you got to be looking at some other different options, right? To see how you can maybe switch it up. And luckily, when you do, when you're the founder, you do have all that flexibility to say, okay, we're ready to switch. We're switching it up. This is what we're gonna do. But being respectful to those who have already been falling in line with the previous vision and everything else that you're doing, and making sure they understand, again, that why the change is happening too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Nothing drives me more nuts than a leadership team that just makes all these decisions, and it seems like it's off the cuff and never tells anybody why they're doing it. And so people just have to follow along if they want to keep their jobs. They have no clue what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Keeping them informed. Well, that's amazing advice. Very good. I think, again, it's probably one of the most direct pieces of advice, but I think it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Get it right or get out, basically. So for those who are listening, if you found this discussion just, really rich, which I know I did, and you learned lots of great stuff, don't forget to like this on iTunes, and not just share it wide and far, because again, I feel blessed that Daniel was referred to me by someone who actually is on his team, and she thought highly enough to have him on the show after listening to all my different interviews. But this is the stuff of leadership here. This is that journey talk, right? Where we have to know about all the turns in the road, and this kind of conversation helps us get there. So Daniel, I really appreciate you joining us. It's been very fruitful, and I'll make sure to put your contact information in the show notes too, for those who might ever want to get a hold of Daniel.
Definitely. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate what you're doing. And if anybody wants to contact me, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.